So I have all these stories, and I started to track all them, but that was really that was the start of Sideline Hustle, was me realizing, that was the first time I realized the white space. And I think what Sideline Hustle has become is the whole mantra is, how can we provide value to the football community and fill the existing white space? There's just so many ways the whole landscape could be improved. It's so easy for people who don't know me to look at Sideline Hustle. Like, I had some kid DM me the other day and say, "You're so fake, man," like whatever. Because it's easy for it to seem fake if you don't know me. And if you don't understand the background, you don't understand the story of how we got here. All right, so what is this, September 1st? We're walking through the streets of Boston. About to tell the Sideline Hustle story. Mo's at training camp. I think it's like the last 2 or 3 days of camp. They got the day off tomorrow. And they start up on game planning week. So, it's really it's go time. And it's a real turning point, I guess, for Sideline Hustle, and just in the sense that it's a lot riding on the season. We've invested a lot in Mo, and just put a lot of energy and our time and effort into helping him be great. So we just got to continue to do what we can to help him be one of the best receivers in the league. But a lot of depending on a lot rides on his performance. I think that whether or not, I really do expect him to have the best year of his career, but whether or not that happens, we'll still, be successful. We'll still have everything we're doing, but, I really think Mo's going to go crazy. And if that happens, the sky's the limit for what's about to happen in the months coming. So it's a cool, exciting time to be a part of, without a doubt. I just did a cut up looking at him from August 10th. August 20th even to what is it now, September 1st, and the strides he's made are unbelievable. Cut it up by different category, by each route, by release, and I have this film library going. And then when I see, things that need to be fixed, I see tendencies, I see, whatever it is, things that are kind of common that are hurting him or even helping him, I make little cut-ups, little NFL training sessions, 5 to 10 minute videos, just showing the clips and coaching him up, and those have been really helpful. And just to see the way he responds, I'll send him a clip about his pad level, which has been one of the common issues in camp thus far, is just raising up before he breaks and some indicators to the DB. But I give him a clip about his pad level, he fixed it the next day. Give him a clip about controlling the tempo at the line of scrimmage, the next day he's super patient. It's just been so cool to see him respond to all this. Oh, it looks windy up there, huh? So that's where we're at. I was thinking about before where this all started. And obviously, coaching at Rutgers, all that stuff. But even before that, I was thinking 7th grade. 7th grade, I started in AAU 7th grade, right? Me and all my boys were playing AAU basketball, and we were all on these different teams around the state, and we would always play each other, which was cool. Hold on, I feel like it's gonna get louder. Anyway, long story short, AAU basketball, 7th grade. Me and all my boys were playing on a bunch of different teams, so now I was like, fuck this. Why are we all playing against each other? We couldn't find a team to take us all, so I literally just started our own team and raised the money for all the registration shits. We bought uniforms, we did everything, man. We were the Western Maine Wildcats. And we literally we won a couple tournaments. All the big state tournaments, we came in second. We always lost to this team, Maine Hoops, who was they had all the ballers, but it was dope. It was that was my first. I was literally the starting small forward and the head coach, as a 13-year-old. So that was really when it started. Me just organizing my own thing, doing it my way, coaching, playing, being a player's coach. That was really the first kind of, first experience doing it. And who knew that it would eventually start to prepare me for all this. This tree is fire. But then, you fast forward to Wesleyan, playing quarterback, blow my shoulder out, start to run the scout team. Did a really good job with that. The next year, kind of talking to the coaches, and, they're trying to go in a rebuilding direction and play some younger guys. And they really encouraged me. They were like, listen, you can go battle for the quarterback spot, but if it's neck and neck, we're probably going to play the younger guy anyway. That's just where we're at as a program. But, we really think you could be a great coach, and we would let you be the quarterback coach. So as a junior in college, how you doing? As a junior in college, I made the decision to become the full-time quarterback coach. And that was, again, being like a player's coach. Like I literally used to like party with my players, you know, at night, and the next day go like go run workouts with them. And you know, the work never suffered, but I learned to, I don't know. I just feel like that experience prepared me for now, living with Muhammad, Sanu, and doing all this. Like I just learned how to understand the reality of kids' lifestyles and then just hold them to a higher standard within that, I guess. And just, you know, also having that bond where guys always feel like we've come from the same cloth, that I've been through what they're going through, that I can really understand it. And it's just been interesting to think about, like, I've always been like this player's coach. And I think the magic of everything I do is how much I love my players. And I've always said that I feel like my greatest ability as a coach is my ability to like build a family amongst my players. And I think that just started from being like literally my boys were my players. Like they were my boys who I went out with, my boys who, you know, I hung out with. But then when we were between the white lines, it was my job to make them better. And I was able to separate those two. And they were able to have enough respect for me. And that's what it was always about for me, was respect. I always felt like, regardless of all the other stuff that might happen that could blur the lines, as long as I had enough respect for me and I conducted myself in the right way, then, you know, that we could always kind of separate the two. That's why now I'm able to live with Mo, I'm able to have a cool social life with Mo. He's one of my best friends. But then when it's time to fucking do football, like I'm the coach, he's the player, and I'm there to make him better. And I think I don't think a lot of people could do that. I think a lot of people don't understand it. They think that, I've had coaches tell me I'm too close to my players, which like I don't even know what that means. But I just think they get uncomfortable that I'm so open with them about my life and everything outside of football. But to me, by allowing guys to see the full version of me and everything I'm about, that's what builds the trust, because they know that they're getting, you know, everything they're getting from me is genuine. And, you know, once you have the trust, bro, once you have the trust, the sky's the limit. But I think that's been one of my greatest abilities, is my ability to establish trust amongst my players, build a family. And I think that started from the Western Maine Wildcats. It started from being a student coach at Wesleyan. And those are the kind of experiences that you can't replace. This is hands down the illest street in Boston. I don't even know what street this is. Salem Street. Who knows what they're gonna do in the winter, bro. Businesses are really gonna shut down. I wake up every day, I hit the field every day to give my all to make players better. And that's really like what fulfills me, what drives me. My first year at Rutgers, I was the youngest coach in the Big Ten. And I always looked up to Cliff Kingsbury because he was the youngest head coach in the country. And that was always like a lofty goal of mine. And I remember I wrote him a letter, I was like 23. And I just said something like, hey, coach, I look up to you, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, how do you feel like you know, made it this far so young? You know, any advice, blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, I remember the two things he said in the letter he wrote back was, you know, 2 words of advice I have for you is do right by your players always and outwork everybody else in the office. And I always kept that letter, and that was always like kind of my mantra. I was like early in my coaching career, year 2. And, you know, now you look where Cliff Kingsbury is now, but do right by your players always. That's number one. Like I always say, and then outwork everybody else in the office. Goes without saying, but I always say like the 2 most important responsibilities of a coach, number 1 is to love your players, and number 2 is to be able to be a great communicator. Whether you're communicating motivation or communicating a play or whatever it is, you gotta love your players and be a great communicator. There's gotta be more fucking helicopter activity around here than anywhere in America. The other day I was trying to record in my room. There was a helicopter circling the fucking building. I swear to God, it was 6 inches from the fucking glass, just hovering. So my first coaching job was as a student at Wesleyan University. I got recruited. I played a quarterback there my freshman, sophomore year. Sophomore year, blew my throwing shoulder out. Started coaching the scout team, kind of just, you know, as I was rehabbing and stuff. Did a really great job. Really came to love it. Ended up being in all the coaches meetings. And then my next year, they offered me the full-time quarterback's job, and I made a transition as a junior in college to literally being the full-time quarterback's coach during my junior and senior years. That was my first job. Then I was the video coordinator, assistant wide receivers coach at the University of Albany. You know, I kind of approached my coaching career too, just like with the mindset that I was going to be the best coach in NFL history. Bill Belichick went to Wesleyan. I graduated from Wesleyan. So my thought was that if I came from the same school he came from, why can't I be better than him? So, you know, I went from my goal after college was just to coach at the highest level I could coach at, build my network. Like I wasn't worried about money or anything. I turned down $30,000, $40,000 full-time coaching jobs at the D3 level. Took the video coordinator job and assistant receivers coach job at the University of Albany for $6,000 for the year. Literally $6,000. My paychecks every other month was like, or every other week was like $170 every other week. Lived in the press box. So I, the head coach knew he was paying me $6,000. I was the only young coach on staff. Everyone else was kind of older with families and established role. And he knew I had nowhere to live, so he gave me the keys to the old press box on top of the athletic facility. It was just like, literally like this trailer sitting on the top of the athletic facility. And I lived there for like 8 months. Told people I had an apartment on campus and made it my home. So that was the beginning of the wild Coach Lieb adventures. And actually, when you really talk about wild Coach Lieb's adventures, I got to backtrack. I actually can't believe I didn't mention this. So junior year going into senior year at Wesleyan, when I decided I wanted to do this coaching thing full time, I wanted to go for it. I asked some of the coaches on staff, I was like, what should I do to start my coaching career? And they were like, just go coach at a bunch of camps around the country, go volunteer, build your network, meet some people. So I took it to another level and was kind of crazy about it and scheduled 28 days of camp over 30 days and slept in my car for 30 days. This was junior year summer. Went from Boston College down to Tennessee, everywhere in between, like North Carolina, South Carolina, NC State, East Carolina, Duke, Virginia Tech, where else? Syracuse, Boston College, UConn, like so many different camps. Slept in my car, like, down the country, like a different camp every day, but literally met 12 coaches at every camp, whatever, exchanged business cards. And when I ended this month tour, wrote a handwritten letter to every single coach I met, probably 300 coaches. And that was really the beginning of like, I was then a 19-year-old kid going to like the coaches convention, which is where, all the coaches kind of get together once a year to network and things like that. And I'm like 19, 20 years old, and I'm shaking hands with D1 head coaches, position coaches, like guys that other people would like dream to meet just because I was, busting my ass volunteering at a college camp. So that was really the beginning of like taking this whole thing to the extreme. And again, doing it my way, and doing it a little bit differently than people expected. So what was it? So then I lived in the press box at Albany. And then after a full season there, it was January, and I got called by Kyle Flood at Rutgers. He told me he wanted to interview me at the coaches convention in Indianapolis. So I was excited, because of course, like I said, my goal was just to get to the highest level and coach at the highest level, and just keep climbing the ladder. So that was definitely a big jump up. I went to the coaches convention in Indianapolis, interviewed for the job. He offered me the job in the room, which was awesome. I was a player development, which is like quality control, and off the field, ended up being the assistant quarterback receivers coach. So I obviously took the job at Rutgers, and then that's when things really started to skyrocket for me, where the game was really opened up to me. I worked for Ralph Friedgen, former head coach at Maryland. So when I got to Rutgers, that's when things really started to take off for me, where the game was really opened up. When I was at Albany, I worked for Coach Aaron Smith, who's now the receivers coach at UConn. He really taught me the beginnings of what it meant to coach receivers, the art of it, all the detail into the game. But then it was working for Ralph Friedgen at Rutgers, who's the former head coach at Maryland, won a national championship, coaching a Super Bowl. He's like one of the GOATs of all GOATs. Working for him, he really taught me what it meant to coach and what it meant to game plan and the difference a coach can make and how to demand more from your players, and just really how to be a professional as a coach. And then I really became Ben McDaniel's right-hand man, and Ben is a younger brother of Josh McDaniels, the Patriots offensive coordinator. I really became his right-hand man right away. He really taught me the details of the wide receiver position. He taught me so much the details of kind of like the ins and outs, all the intricacies, all the nuances, all the things we talk about. He built that foundation for me. And he was really the guy that made me fall in love with the position, because I played quarterback, and of course you have a great understanding of what receivers have to do, but you don't realize really how intricate it is and how every step matters and how shifting your weight one way can make all the difference on a release, and all these little details. I fell in love with how much of a difference those little details can make in a player's game if you're aware of them and you coach them. And I think that's what Ben did so well, was he taught with so much detail. So he taught me really the art of the position, and then Anthony Campanelli changed my life. Like, Anthony Campanelli is the DB's coach for the Miami Dolphins right now. Best coach I've ever been around. He taught me what it meant to love your players. He taught me what it meant to care about your players, to put your players first, to sacrifice everything for your players, to demand more from your players. Like, he taught me what it meant to be a coach. I think those guys, Coach Aaron Smith, Coach Friedgen, Ben McDaniels, they gave me a lot of the framework for, just how to build everything I am and build the foundation. But I didn't feel like, when I think to when I started running my own room, I tried to replicate Anthony Campanelli. So he to me was just, I've never seen anyone love his players and demand more from his players. And that's what I really admired about him, was that he could demand so much from his players and speak to them so crazy when he's trying to get the most out of them. And then after practice, wrap his arm around them and ask them how his mother was doing. And I think that's the same relationship I have with my players, even deeper to some extent with some guys. But I think that's it to me. And I think the one thing about coaching is there's no one definition of a great coach. It's being yourself and making players better, which makes you a great coach. But to me, what makes a great coach in my mind for who I am, it's somebody who can do that, who can demand, push players past their limits, and doing that is an inherently uncomfortable process. So the ability to relate to your players in a way that allows you to push them that far, and then having the balls and the courage to actually speak to them in a way that's going to push them and get under their skin and look a man in his eyes and demand more from him when he doesn't want to give you any more, but then still build a relationship with them off the field and truly, genuinely love your players enough that they know all of that came from a place of love. That no matter how nasty you got, no matter how demanding you were, no matter how much they didn't want to listen to you, they have enough respect for you and they still follow through because they know that you're coming from a place of love, because you've built a genuine relationship with them and you've built that trust, and they know you as a whole person. So I think, that's really what I've always tried to do as a coach, and I think Anthony was really the guy that was the first person I saw truly embody that, fully in himself, and that he's really been probably my biggest idol in coaching, amongst all those other guys I talked about. Those are kind of the guys that shaped my career at Rutgers, and then I got promoted after my first year there from quality control to assistant receivers coach. That's when I was the youngest coach in the Big Ten. That's when my role really increased. Coach Friedgen retired. Ben McDaniels became the offensive coordinator, so I was his right-hand man. Ended up really being second in command of the offense in some ways, just because my knowledge of it was, I had the best understanding, overall knowledge of everything, because I had to help Ben build it and draw every page of the playbook, and all the intricate, shitty GA work I did, staying up. And I don't think people realize, when you're a GA, when I tell you, I slept in the press box because there was no need to go home, right? When I went to Rutgers, I was making, my first year I made $24,000 at Rutgers and I made $18,000. When you get promoted, they actually give you a pay decrease because they take money out of your salary to pay for classes that they don't let you go to because they demand so much from you on the football side. It's fucked up. That's a whole other story. Anyway, I made $24,000 and $18,000. I made no money. I'm living in New Jersey, one of the most expensive places in America. I lived in the facility for 2 years. And I don't think people realize, there's no, I would wake up at 6 a.m. I'm working till 2 a.m. every day, without fail. I'm talking every day, 8 months a year. You got a couple months in May, in the summer where it's a little less, you're still there, it's 7 days a week, but the hours aren't as crazy. I'm talking 8 months a year. You're working 6, 7 a.m. until midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Some nights, it's 4 a.m. depending on the game plan you got to. It was grueling work, but all of that work, all of those hours, right? You talk about the 10,000 hour rule. People, when you look at where I am now and 29 years old and we're doing all the awesome things we're doing, I got my 10,000 hours in year 1 at Rutgers. I got probably 20,000 in by year 3 at Rutgers. You know what I'm saying? Just the amount of experience, as terrible as the work was at the time, the amount of hours we stacked up, 18 hours a day coaching football and game planning and building relationships with kids and scouting the defense and drawing up plays and all the different things of coaching. That's really what shaped me. So then when it got to my second year at Rutgers and I'm, the right-hand man of the offensive coordinator, through all that work, I knew every little detail of the offense, and he really came to trust me to the point where, fast forward to, all through the season, it was a great year. I learned so much that year. My job on game day was I was in the booth. So Ben would call the plays from the field. I was in the booth, and I was his eyes and ears from the booth. So I had to know, and I had to label everything. I had to chart everything. So I had to call it out for him, communicate with him, but also keep the chart so I could keep track of tendencies. So it was the front, the coverage, the pressure every single time. And I had to do all this film study before the game. So I knew, you don't just come in blind. You know that Michigan is, a cover 6 team, and they like to play this on third down, and these are their top coverages here. You got it all scouted out by situation. And then you're kind of just confirming that they're playing their normal game plan during the game, or, hey, they've been doing more of this. Now you're just trying to let Ben stay a step ahead. But I was charting everything. And to the point where when we played Michigan at the Big House, was really a crazy experience for me, because you could just feel the history on the field before the game. I'm like, I'm at the Big House. And sometime in the third quarter, Ben was like, yo, Drew, what do you like here? And I called a play, and it was like a shot play. And it was a play I actually designed and kind of thought of during the week. And I was like, let's fucking go for it. And I think a play or two later, he called it, and that shit scored a touchdown. And that was wild for me, because I was like, wow. That really, that was a crazy feeling. It was a great feeling. And I can't lie to you about this. This is real shit. I could never make this up. I always had this expression that the only feeling better than winning is love. And it was something I wrote down to myself the beginning of my coaching career, because I love my family and I love my friends, and there's just a lot of the people in my life are what make me. So I always kind of came into it with, as great as winning is, as much as we're going to sacrifice for this, there's nothing better than love. And I called that touchdown. We scored. We're down 7, down 10, or whatever at Michigan. Fucking my binder's sitting on the desk in front of me. It flips over, and I look down, and that quote is written on the back of the binder. And I saw it right after I called that touchdown. And I opened the press box window, and I'm like, stick my head out, and the place is like silent. Like, you know, it's like buzzing a little bit, but it's like silent. Like we just fucking, like they're now scared that Rutgers is gonna come in here and beat them for the second year in a row. This is Harbaugh's first year. And I just kind of looked around. I was like, wow, like the effect that, not that it was just me, but that was really like the most impact I ever had, calling a touchdown, a play I designed. I was like, wow, the impact I just had on this moment. I sat back down, closed the window, and I was like, I'm good, I'm done. And that was literally the moment I knew I was gonna leave Rutgers. In that moment, my highest point, I was like, that's what it feels like. That was amazing. Here I am, the most historic place in college football, and I was like, I'm not going to keep chasing this. And there were some other things going on the personal side then that like were just, you know, they were just, football was demanding so much of me. I was at a crossroads where I was the youngest coach in the Big Ten. I was getting called to get full-time interviews after the season for full-time jobs. And, you know, I really had to make a decision. Am I going to commit to this or not? And it was like, here we are at this crossroads. It's going to come up. This was like week 8. So as soon as the season's over, I'm going to start getting these calls. We're going to have to start making some decisions. At the highest point, the first touchdown I've ever called at that level, I really felt like in my gut, I was like, yo, this is it. That was it. And the next 4 weeks, I finished out, did my job, did a great job, and I walked away. Coach Flood ended up getting fired. You know, I stayed on with Chris Ash for 4 or 5 months just to kind of see what that would be like. I wanted to give it a chance with the new staff. But then I walked away and really just to like, when you look back on it, I wanted to do more with my life. Like when I think about, I was putting 18, 20 hours, every ounce of my soul into football for what? Just to make sure we've got 7 different ways to beat their cover 3 look, just to make sure we know what the mic point is on every one of their fronts. Like the work just seemed frivolous compared to what I could be pouring my energy into. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that it was my family. I knew that I hadn't seen my brother play football in years. I knew that, you know, it was impossible to hold a relationship or try to find a girl under these circumstances. I knew that I hadn't been around my mother in years. I knew that I was missing birthdays and holidays and weddings. All these things you gotta sacrifice. I was just like, this ain't it. Like, there's just gotta be a better way. I love football. I love what I'm doing. I love the impact I can have on kids through the game of football, but there's gotta be a better way than sleeping under my desk, working 18 hours a day and having no life outside of this box just to go 4-8 in my last year at Rutgers. Like it just, you know, it was a lot. I got those stories about the actual horrors of GA life. We got to do a whole. So speaking of that, so the horrors of one of the biggest realizations I had at Rutgers was that, holy fuck, the reality of coaching major college football is nothing like you would think it is. It's fucking complete chaos. It's a shit show. It's a buffoon show. It's hilarious every single day, but there's nothing organized. There's nothing straight. There's nothing ever settled or calm, or it's constant chaos. And I was like, these stories need to be told. So like I have so many of those stories of, you know, having to move my air mattress from the quarterback room up to the cafeteria, up to like all the little things that happen to, you know, like little Johnny's late because he's hungover, like whatever, all the shit we had to do. But like that, like just realizing how different the reality of it was. So I was always a writer my whole life. In college, I was always a great writer. Always thought I was going to be a writer. So after that Michigan game, when I knew I was going to quit, we had 4 or 5 weeks left in the season, and then a bunch of weeks after during the coaching transition. So I was thinking to myself, like, these stories need to be told. Like maybe I'll start to write a book of short stories about all the crazy experiences coaching football and how wild the reality is compared to what you think it would be. You think it's this well-oiled machine, and it's not at all. And this is every place I've ever heard of, the New England Patriots included. The behind the scenes is always a shit show when you're coaching football. But so what I started to do is I started to write down. I have like a stack of 400 stickies. I used to just write down little memories, little things that would happen in the office, little past stories people would tell. Oh, Freddie shit himself in the middle of the meeting, or you know, like Norris got mad and threw a water bottle at the head coach in the middle of a meeting. Like just little things that happen, just little things to spark it. So I have all these stories, and I started to track all them. But that was really like, that was the start of Sideline Hustle. Was me realizing, that was the first time I realized the white space. And I think what Sideline Hustle has become is the whole mantra is, how can we provide value to the football community and fill the existing white space? There's just so many ways the whole landscape could be improved, right? So that was the first place I noticed it, was these stories need to be told. Like people need to know what the realities of coaching at this level really are. So that's when I started to write down these short stories. Then I leave, I go to Wesleyan. I'm like, I'm gonna get my master's degree in writing. I go back to get my master's degree, go back to my alma mater. I'm the receivers coach there. It's kind of like a transition out. I can decide, is doing it at the D3 level, do I miss that competition or am I on my way out? And, so it was a good transition for me, get my master's degree, figure out what the next step is. So I decided to get it in writing. So in all my writing classes, I'm writing these stories. Wrote a good amount of the book, but I was just doing it and I was like, all right, this ain't it the rest of my life. I'm not sitting like this, typing by myself. Like I love people too much for that. So I was like, all right, let's turn this into a podcast. So I call Ralph Friedgen, I call Leonte Carew, one of Rutgers' best receivers ever, the best player I had ever coached to that point, the first great player I ever coached, Leonte Carew. Gary Nova, former great quarterback, Mike Teal, kid I worked with, head coach at Bosco, former Rutgers great quarterback, a lot of the Rutgers greats, some other guys. I got these 8 or 9 former players and coaches together and we started the Sideline Hustle podcast. Where before that, the planning and the thought of it was I had this idea of like educating people and also entertaining and telling the funny stories, just basically the behind the scenes. Let's share the reality of what this is like. Here's what it's really like game planning for Ohio State. Here's what it's really like dealing with crowd noise at the highest level. Here's what it's really like, when coaches looking for jobs at that level, recruiting, all the little nuances. We had these discussions on air and told funny stories, but also educated. And that was the birth of the Sideline Hustle podcast. And it started as a platform for coaches to share stories about the realities of college football. Did that for about a year. Even before that, I watched 3 months worth of YouTube videos learning how to produce my own podcast, how to produce my own videos, because I couldn't afford to pay for any of this. I didn't really know what it was going to look like. A lot of my family and everyone didn't believe in it, so I wasn't even all that excited to like share it with people and be like, hey, come help me with this. It was really the first of its kind. There was no podcast like this. There was no one doing this in the football space. So a lot of it was me just trying to figure out what it was going to look like in my own head. So I produced it, again, my way. Like, it was crazily produced. It was produced in a way I haven't heard a podcast produced before, but it worked. It was a bunch of people telling stories tied together to flow, and we really did educate people on the game of football. We came out with 4 episodes in 2 days on the coaching carousel, and during that time, we became the number 7 podcast on the Apple charts in sports in the world for like 2 weeks. It was crazy, and this was out of my backpack. I learned how to do it off YouTube videos. So that was like the peak at that time, and that's when I was like, oh shit, okay, we're fucking onto something here. That was right during my second year at Wesleyan. That year at Wesleyan, coaching the receivers, we broke every Division III record in country history. Every Division III passing record for a team. My best player, Mike Bruler, he broke every individual record. It was like the most historic season, in league history. So like that, this was all happening at the same time, and I believe in all these signs. I believe in energy and all this shit. So all these crazy forces were kind of combining, breaking records here. At the same time, my school, the staff, guys who I looked up to, guys who I played for, really not respecting me or appreciating the work I've done. They're kind of treating me like shit. So I'm like, all right, I need to get out of here. What's next? And then I'm sitting here looking at, here's this podcast that no one thought was going to be anything. What do I do? Do I go commit to this thing? I just got my master's degree at Wesleyan. We just broke all these records. We just had the number 7 podcast in the country. What's the move here? And I was kind of hesitant, so I was still looking for jobs. And I had this $80,000 job offer in New York City as like an event planner or whatever. It would have been just some 9-to-5 job. Would have made great money. Would have continued to get promoted. Would have done a great job. And I went all the way through the process, interviewed, got offered the job. The day I had to accept the job was the first day. Fucking crazy how this comes full story talking to you, Red. The day I got the first job was the first day I posted a video. I got 100,000 views on Twitter. The video was Juwan running that Dino route. It was like the first time I broke down Juwan running that slant, go slant, his like most famous route in college. And I just like broke it down, had no idea who Juwan was, no idea. And wow, that's crazy telling this right now. The day I was offered this fucking job, $80,000. We got 100,000 views the first time. It was Juwan Winfrey, kid from Englewood, New Jersey, who'd end up being my first NFL client, but I had no idea who he was. I saw number 9 from Colorado running a route. I broke it down as I do. And I turned the job down, called my mother, and I was like, yo, we need to move in together to this place in New Jersey. Like, I'm going for the Sideline Hustle thing. Like, it was a longer story than that. But we had been discussing this. I'm either going to take this job and get my place in the city, or I'm going to commit to Sideline Hustle, and the only way I'm going to make it work is if we can move in together and, get my brother into a school district we liked in New Jersey, all this stuff. And we made that move. And again, the timing of it was crazy. The day after all the success at Wesleyan, I had this awesome job offer. Life was going well. I turned it down to go coach at Don Bosco. Don Bosco paid me $4,000 for the year, $5,000 for the season. I had no plans other than just to start hustling and figuring it out. And I was living with my mother, so she was I was going to just provide whatever I could, and she was willing to, God bless her, she's become the co-CEO, the right-hand man of this whole thing, but she was just willing to sacrifice to allow me to chase my dreams. And for the first year or so, she was providing almost everything. And then the training business started to take off. My first year at Bosco, we had some success. I had a great receiver who kind of put me on the map in the state. Training business started to take off. Started to really double down on the video content. So the podcast turned into like dope, whatever, but I was like, holy shit, I can't spend, it was taking me like 20 hours to produce every podcast. Like, it was unbelievable work because I didn't know what I was doing. And then so, people were like, hey, why don't you start breaking down film? Why don't you start doing some, that's when Teach Tapes were born. I started to figure out I started to listen to Gary Vee. Gary Vee was all about, maximize social media, all that stuff. And that was the first kind of time I'd been aware to all this stuff. So I was like, all right, let me start an Instagram page and start a Twitter page and start to create content for coaches and teach. And again, that, similar to the podcast, started off kind of shitty, and I kept producing and kept making content and kept figuring out how to storytell, and it got better and better and better to the point where, almost every Teach Tape we put out now gets 100,000 views. Some have gotten 1 million. We did one with Mo last summer that got 55 million. Like, Teach Tapes have become a staple in the football education space. And that's when, to me, once we figured out the video content, again, right, it was seeing the white space. And I was like, oh shit, we can teach the masses. There are thousands of kids who, when it's not football season, their receivers coach, has some other full-time job, he's not around. There are thousands of kids who are desperately in need of coaching, who have no resources. Like, wow, what an unbelievable opportunity to use the platforms. And again, Gary Vee's theories just mixed with my own understanding of, there's nobody out here teaching the game on the relevant platforms. To learn the game right now, you have to subscribe for $19.99 to some website and go on some WordPress site and watch some boring video. There is nobody creating cool educational content about the sport on the relevant platforms. And we were really the first people to do that. The first people to really start to teach the masses. And that was, that was 2018, first year at Bosco. 2019, second year at Bosco, we go to the state championship. In between that time, so through that route I broke down from Juwan on that day, a lot of people started tagging him, yo, he's from Jersey, you should hit him up. That was on Twitter. You should hit him up. I DM him, like, yo, this is dope. He's like, oh, I actually got a lot of views. Like, I was like, hey, you want to come on and do a podcast and talk about the art of the double move? So we did like an 18-minute podcast on the art of the double move. And at the end of the podcast, I was like, yo, if you're ever back in Jersey, let me know, let's train. He's like, yeah, I'll let you know. Comes back to Jersey, hits me up, we train, and he loved it. I ended up preparing him for the draft, and it's a kid who nobody on anybody's draft board said he was going to get drafted. He was hurt his whole career at Colorado. Nobody said he was going to get drafted, and he went into a workout with the Denver Broncos and fucking killed it. And it speaks to our work we did together. His routes were so incredible. He looked so good in all the drills, all the routes in that workout. They were like, we have to draft him. And they ended up trading up 2 spots to draft him in the 6th round. So that was the first huge, monumental Sideline Hustle moment. Other than the podcast kind of blowing up, that was the first huge monumental moment in Sideline Hustle history. Juwan getting drafted, really putting us on the map. And then we kind of became legitimate. At that time, we also hit, I think, 10,000 followers. Then NFL guys started reposting our stuff. Now Juwan's on the Broncos. He's sharing it with guys. And just the word of mouth, everything started to kind of build, right? Training Leonte Carew, training Tim Wright that summer. I had a few NFL guys. Juwan gets drafted. And then that summer is when I first linked up with Sanu. Training Juwan all summer. People are kind of getting Sanu's ear, like, hey, if you're back in Jersey, this kid Drew is the real deal. Like, go train with him. A lot of Rutgers alums who I'd work with, etc. So we worked together the first time that season, which was not this past summer, the summer before, 2019 summer. And he really loved it. He was like, yo, I want you to be my guy. But I didn't really know each other like that. We worked maybe 8 times that summer. I go to a bunch of his games. He gets traded to the Patriots. I'm watching film for him. We're building a relationship. But everything's starting to build at that point, right? Juwan's going into his rookie year. I'm coaching at Don Bosco. We're supposed to have a great year. We end up going to the state championship. The platform is growing from 20,000 to 30,000 to 40,000. I think we're at like 40, 50,000 followers now. Everything's just starting to build. And then Mo gets traded to the Patriots. And then, Mo gets traded, gets hurt, doesn't have a great time there. And then that's when he really committed to me. We committed to each other because through all that, I stayed with him. And every day I was in his ear, we were talking, I was spreading positivity, I was coaching him. And that's when we built the trust through all those hard times where we kind of had a conversation at the end of that. And he was like, oh, I want you to be my guy full time. And just with the relationship I'd built through Mo, how much he had helped the platform, everything just felt right it felt like it was the time to commit to this guy, because it was not just this guy, right? Mo had become my brother. He'd become a great friend of mine. He'd become someone I believed in, someone whose game I had picked apart in every nuance. I knew how to fix it. I knew the improvements that needed to be made. It was just, it was the time. So coached at Bosco, and this was the next kind of hard decision. This is now where I'm standing right now. This is the first time I've been in the fall not playing or coaching on a football team in like 15 years. So this is all new to me. And so we played in the state championship, and I knew that Bosco season, it was my last year. I didn't even want to come back the last year at Bosco, but I knew how good we were going to be. I had a class of kids who I had committed to. Like, I had to just, my heart had to do it. Even though we lost money that year on Sideline Hustle. I had to sacrifice a lot for Sideline Hustle, the 2019 season, by coaching at Don Bosco. But it's, again, that's what coaching's about. It's about the kids. And that was a big moment for me in staying true to myself, where I could have chased the money, I could have chased building the business, and probably would have been the right selfish thing to do. And I will always be able to lay my head on the pillow and feel proud of that decision that I came back to Bosco and coached my balls off. And we played in the state championship and lost, but it was an unbelievable run and well worth the sacrifice. Every 8 minutes. So that year I coached at Bosco, I kind of know that this is it. I'm really mentoring Mo heavy. I'm mentoring Juwan heavy. Started to work with Olamide Zacchaeus, who's a receiver for the Falcons, who's probably going to start this year. Had a couple other guys in the league, right? So it's starting to build. And I'm like, all right, I knew it was the time where I had to just do right by my family. I couldn't. Again, I was getting paid $5,000-$6,000 to drive 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back to Don Bosco, making no money. It was all the time and energy. As much as I love the kids, I would do my family a disservice and doing myself a disservice by putting so much energy into something that wasn't allowing me to provide for the people I love. And this is the world we live in. So after that season, again, committed to, I'm done. I'm training full time. Well, side note, tore my ACL during that season, which is a whole other story, but kind of changed some things. But anyway, after that season, let's see, I go to the Super Bowl with Nike again for the second year in a row. They flew me down to Miami. And that was kind of like, now things start to pick up. Now people are kind of stopping me at Miami. They know who I am. I'm getting requested for these interviews. I know pro guys. I'm out in the clubs with all these pro guys, talking to Darius Slay, talking to Todd Gurley, talking to all these guys who I've met along the way. I'm kind of like this figure. I'm the Instagram coach. I remember I was at a party with Julian Edelman. He came up to me and he was like, "Oh, you're that coach on Instagram, right?" And like that's what. So again, like you just start to, and so it was like, all right, we're committing to this thing full time. That was a Super Bowl. Then it was about March. Right before, February, March, I have a conversation with Mo. We locked down our deal for me to be his full-time trainer. Didn't know I was going to live with him yet, but knew I was going to, he was going to be my main focus. And then he had ankle surgery in March. I'm still just, then Corona hits. I'm still running, doing all this stuff. Corona hits. We figure out how can we, that's the Corona hits, and that was really the focus. All right, we have to focus less on the in-person training and more on the online stuff. So Corona ended up being a huge blessing for us because we were still focused on building an online business, but I think I would have been so tied up in serving the kids and traveling all these places to train kids in person and get my hands on guys and just really help people. That's how I help people the most, is in between the white lines in person. But I think Corona really made me really sit back and think, how can I scale this now? So many kids now are at home, they don't know what to do. Like, we're all living in the same world. There is even more of a need for our services. The white space that we saw, the white space we now have a 2-year head start in, everyone else sees it. Everyone else is going to jump in it. So now how do we fucking get rolling? And that's when now, since Corona, is where things have taken off tenfold. We've started to build a team. We've started to make some money. We built the VIP program on Patreon. That started to make some money. That allowed me to start paying some people. I had Dario Highsmith, who lived with me for the last 2 summers. He graduates from college. He's a former great player of mine. He graduates from college, moves into New Jersey. He takes over the New Jersey training business. And then, we're just building through Corona. Mo's getting healthy. And I'm just figuring out how can we scale this online. I was very hesitant to allow my mother to start working with me full time, just because her and my father once ran a restaurant together, and it's basically what they got divorced over. She became more of his employee than his wife. And I never wanted that to happen with us. So I was always very resistant towards letting her help. But she was providing so much value, doing so much for me. She was so insistent about helping that finally I gave in, and I gave her so much responsibility. And the minute I shared the responsibility with her is when everything took off. Is when I started to scale myself. I started to duplicate myself. She was able to take meetings for me, answer calls for me, and it really gave me a lot of freedom. To then now we built this foundation of her kind of doing some things, working together. We're living together in this house that became the Sideline Hustle Lab. And then I get the call in about April for Mo asking me to come down to Atlanta and start training. And I'm there for about 3 weeks thinking like, all right, I'll be here for a couple days, couple weeks, and then I'll go back, you know, like I didn't want to be too involved. And I'm getting ready, actually it was after like 6 days. I'm getting ready to go back. I'm gonna go on my flights tomorrow. He's like, where are you going? I'm like, well, I gotta go back to Jersey, right? Like, he's like, no, I want you here all summer. Like, I didn't even really know, like I knew I was gonna be full time, but I didn't know if I was gonna fly back and forth. Like, I didn't know what the deal was. So, you know, I came down there with no expectations. Just let me be down there as long as he wants me. And I had booked like a 6-day trip, whatever, and he was like, no, I want you down here full time. So I canceled the flight, stayed another 2 weeks. Then I had to go to Jersey to get some things settled. That was when Dario came in and that stuff. I had to finish that transition. So I was in Jersey for maybe 2.5 weeks. And then I flew back down to Atlanta and I was with Mo the rest of the summer. And that's when really like we took over the world. That's when Pinky and the Brain started. That's when, you know, Mo and I are very similar, I think, in our outlook on life. We're very positive people. We're very driven. We're very focused. We're go-getters. We don't fucking take no for an answer. We think that anything is possible. We think that we're limitless. And so that energy that we've combined on over the last 4 months living together has just been fucking awesome. And we really wake up every day like, yo, let's take over the world. And we joke and say that we're Pinky and the Brain because, like, you know, that cartoon where he's like, hey, what do you want to do today? Same thing we do every day, take over the world. And that's us, man. One is a genius, the other is insane. You know, it's just been special. Me and Mo. It's he's so genuine, he's so generous. He wants to see me grow and thrive, and he knows that I'm giving my all to help him. And I've sacrificed a lot to be here. I've left my family, left the whole business. I've sacrificed a lot of other opportunities. There's plenty of guys I've turned down to stay here, but you know, he's given me just as much in return and provided just as much in return. And I think that every day we make each other better. To see how much he pushes me to be a better coach, how much he demands of me, how much I give right back to him, how much he takes the coaching and applies it to his game and improves, the mutual respect we have for each other, the fact that, like, you know, our blow-ups, our arguments are on the field and about football. Like, it's just I'm just very grateful for a guy who's worth as much as he's worth, who's accomplished as much as he's accomplished, to be humble enough to let me into his life and allow me to do my thing and coach him just like I would anybody else and demand more of him, and for him to be humble enough to take that and accept that, and for him to respect me enough to think that what I have to say is valuable, and for it to make it, it's just, I'm just very grateful for it all. It's really pretty surreal, to be honest. Like, you go through that whole fucking story, which is probably the first time I've told it front to back like that. And now I'm sitting here in Boston, living in the nicest apartment in the city, living with Muhammad Sanu, trying to take over the world and help him become a monster. I mean, it's a pretty special deal. It's pretty fucking crazy, man. And the crazy thing is we're just getting started, bro. It's been 2 years. It's been 3 years. Like, 10 years in, we're going to, and you know, you say taking over the world, like, I don't even mean it. I'm competitive and I want to fucking take over the world and all that shit. Like, I want to dominate in a business sense, right? But it's just really, like, so cool to think about how many people we're about to help in the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 years. How many people we've helped already. We've like I say this, the best thing I did from going from Don Bosco to Sideline Hustle full time is I went from being able to impact 20 kids at a time to impacting 100,000 kids at a time. And I really do think that we're coaching the masses. And just like I wasn't able to be as full time with Juwan and Mike Burton and Carl Nagadosi and Olamide and all these other pro guys who had become part of my little tight circle and guys who trusted me. I moved with Mo full time, I wasn't with them, plus Corona. And for them to be able to say, yo, all I need to do is see you succeeding on Instagram and see you on the cover of USA Today and on the cover of the New York Times and the Boston Globe, and just to see the way that our success story has motivated other people, and to see the way that we've just been an example of what you can do, you know, in this day and age with the resources available to you, and just with, you know, believing in yourself. I think that was kind of what I thought. I remember the second or third night we threw with Cam. And, you know, like Cam, it's funny, like, being around these guys, right, and coaching Muhammad Sanu. Like, I don't think of it as Cam Newton when I'm on the field. I'm just like, yo, the fucking quarterback needs to throw us the ball and put it in the right spot and fucking throw it on time. You know what I mean? It's very, like, I'm doing my job. But then you kind of leave and you see the pictures of me dapping Cam up, and it's like, how'd I get here? Like, believe in yourself, yo. Like, I'll never forget what people said, people close to me, close friends, family members, when are you going to get a real job? How are you going to make money on a podcast? Like, people who still to this day haven't taken the time to understand what I'm doing and still say, how's your podcast going? Like, little things like that, you know, could easily discourage somebody along the way, easily make you doubt yourself, easily make you think that, like, is this the path? Is this worth it? And just manifest that shit. Like, I had a vision. I believed in it, right? Like, that's the way it all worked out. I was lucky enough where I was in the fucking trenches for 5-6 years, coaching Division I football, learning the business, getting promoted, getting this job here, doing all the things, living and breathing in fucking football. And then to be able to step away from it and take all that experience and share it with people and use that knowledge to help people, it's been a blessing. And I think that I was lucky that I truly did live it. I truly did experience it. I truly did sleep under my desk every single day for 3 years. I truly did coach 5 NFL players, develop 5 NFL players while I was at Rutgers. I truly was the youngest coach in the Big Ten. Like, they're truly worth experiences that I had. And that allowed me to stay true to the vision because I knew I was in it. I lived in it. I was in the belly of the beast. And then I stepped outside and I was like, nobody can fucking tell me how this is run. I know how this is, and I know I know the white space. I had a vision. And I think that the interesting thing about coaching is it's such a grueling profession that most guys, when they leave, they don't take a step back and think, oh, how can I stay in this game and keep working it? They go off to some other job that's comfortable and kind of mindless and sales or whatever it is that gives you a consistent paycheck, and it takes away all the uncertainty that coaching provides. Most guys run towards certainty and away from the uncertainty. And I'm kind of one of the rare breed where I kind of did it different, where I was like, I love football. I want to stay in football. I just don't want to live the lifestyle required to coach the highest level. But how can I still coach the highest level? And again, I always felt like my calling is to change the world through the game of football. I always feel like my calling was to deeply impact kids. The first summer I ever coached was even before I got hurt. It's funny how it all works out. The summer going into the year I got hurt was the first time I ever coached. I was just training to play quarterback for Wesleyan, and in the time I had some young kids that I was coaching and spending a lot of time with, and they were paying me little money, for these little sessions. And a lot of the kids wrote me letters after the year and were like, Coach, thank you so much for all the work. Like, you've inspired me to be a better man. And I'll never forget that feeling. I was like, wow, I could chase this feeling. Like this is some fulfilling shit. Then that year I get coached, I'm running the scout team, and it all kind of leads on to it. But I think that's a lot of what's special about us, right? Is that, like, it's so easy for people who don't know me to look at Sideline Hustle. Like, I had some kid DM me the other day and say, you're so fake, man, like whatever. Because it's easy for it to seem fake if you don't know me. And if you don't understand the background, you don't understand the story of how we got here, right? A lot of guys on Instagram are just spewing BS and are just talking out of their ass, are just copying other guys. Like, I really was in it. Like, it's a different story, right? When your livelihood, your paycheck is dependent on getting people open, that's being a coach. That's different than being a trainer. Your livelihood, your ability to feed your family is dependent on getting Timmy to do his job and get open on third down to win the game. If that doesn't happen, all eyes are on you, right? Like, that's a different level of pressure, a different level of commitment, a different level of relationship and bond you have to have with your players to trust them in that moment, because if they don't make that play in that moment, then you're going to not have a job and not have the ability to feed your family. That's the difference between a coach and then a lot of these other guys on Instagram who are trainers who provide a lot of great things and do a lot of great things. It's just different than what we provide, the football education. You cannot educate the game of football the way we do if you have not lived it at the highest level, at every level. High school, D3, D2, D1 AA, D1A. I've been through it all. I've been to a bowl game at the highest level. I've fucking been through it all, man. Now living with NFL players, coaching the fucking New England Patriots behind the scenes. Like, unless you've lived it, like that's why I'm able to make a video that an 8-year-old from Germany who just started playing football for the first time can learn from, but Calvin Ridley also is going to retweet because he relates to it as well. Like, that's the beauty, because I've done it at every level. And I think that just, and it's not even about me, it's just, I think that is the difference between a coach and why I think a coach is so valuable, right? Because I'm putting just as much on the line as you are. A trainer, hey, go do these drills, get faster, get stronger, let me make you a better route runner, and then go play, and then it's on you, bro. That's what I feel like I've done with Mo. And that's why I think Mo loves and respects me so much. I've tied the same way where if he drops a ball, all eyes are on him. Guess where else they're going to be coming? They're coming right to fucking Sideline Hustle. I've tied my legacy, not my legacy, I've tied my fate to his in a way. I'm going through this with him. It's not like, hey, hey, we worked together this summer. Good luck, man. Like, I'll see you. Best of luck. It's fucking, I'm here still taking responsibility for your performance. Every single day I will share the responsibility in your performance because I'm a coach. And I think that's really what defines a coach. A great coach, when your players play badly, it's my fucking fault. A great coach, when your players play well, it's all them. That's what a great coach does. But you are there to share the responsibilities of the ups and downs and help uplift them. Like, that's a coach. And that's different. That's when your livelihood is dependent on pushing someone past their limit. My ability to feed my family is dependent on my ability to relate to this kid so that I can push him to a place he never thought he could get to. And that's what, thank goodness, we're doing with Mo. It's what I've done with countless players at the high school and college levels. It's why we've got this crazy cult following, man. Because even through the DMs, there are kids who I've shared 3,000 DMs with and spent hours of my life coaching up via text or sending videos to. Or I love using this game to uplift people. And I feel like that's my calling, and I've been able to do it at scale. But now, I've been able to do it through the DMs with kids from Brazil. My guy Japa, who is the player of the year in Brazil. I've been coaching him via emails and texts for 3 years for a monthly fee. And he just won the national player of the year in the country of Brazil. Every level to now doing the same thing with Mo. But what doesn't change is the love I have for my players. And again, sharing, I am not one just to say, oh, hey, like, oh yeah, he fucked that. Like, I am on this journey with you. I am going to share in the responsibility. I will take responsibility for your performance. I think that's a coach. And I think that bond that you take when another man is willing to tie himself to you, that trust, that connection, that is what I'm trying to really scale, I think. And I think that's what we can do. I think I'm the people's coach. I think that's really like how I see myself, is I am the people's coach. I am here to help coach as many people as possible and give these little tidbits of advice that help take their game to the next level or help give them confidence or help them believe in themselves in some way. It's not going to result in all these guys playing in the NFL, but it's going to result in guys learning to believe in themselves, guys learning to push themselves, guys learning to look for answers rather than giving up. Like all these things that football teaches, all these things that our platform provides, if we can scale this and we can affect the masses with this, I really think that can change the world. I think that if the effect I can have on Mohamed Sanu, if the effect I can have on my Don Bosco players, my Wesleyan players, my Rutgers players, the effect that I can have on the people who I've poured my heart and soul into, if we can have that effect through this platform with hundreds of thousands of millions of people, I think that the impact we can have on the world is limitless. And I think that's kind of the real vision behind this whole thing. Who knows how that's going to shape out? Who knows what platforms it's going to be on, what shows we're going to create, who I'm going to be training, or where it's going to take us. But I think that vision has been that we can change the world through football. That's kind of remained clear. And that's kind of been the North Star the whole time. And I think we'll continue navigating and continue filling the white space, but see if we can do it.